Hey you guys, this is Professor Vint. Welcome to your online course. This is a syllabus video. I'm going to run through different portions of the syllabus. I encourage you to read it in total. There'll be some provisions in there that won't apply to this class, so I'll just take it as it comes. So this is Philosophy 11. Our section number is 10230. We are meeting entirely online in this class. You won't need to come into campus because I know I'm not, right? So you won't need to. I know that oftentimes when you take an online class, it can be very stressful because the professor isn't on campus. It's hard to get in contact with them and you feel like, oh my gosh. Let me assure all of you, email me or tweet me, ask me any questions that you have. My contact information will be in the syllabus and I want you to succeed. So the class is all online. And then number two, this class is super duper duper condensed. It takes place in 5 weeks. The breakdown is almost 3 weeks per week. It's a lot of work, this class, but it's also a ton of fun. So here we are. We're taking critical thinking. It's offered through Long Beach City College. Let me just move this so it's maybe a little bit better in your, maybe it's, well, never mind. So Jose Vasconcelos is going to be our motto for the class. So the idea is it's something of an inspiration to let us look forward to as we move through the material. I've included the translation here in English on the right and the original Spanish on the left. Thanks to Professor Garcia for helping me translate this. The text reads, "Only books will lift this country out of ignorant cruelty." And the idea here is not one that originates with Jose Vasconcelos, our Mexican philosopher, but instead it's a theme, the idea that we can be driven by our passions, by what we automatically think is true, by our prejudices, or we can develop and cultivate our minds. And in so doing, we're able to move ourselves past our base cruelty and ignorance and into a realm of greater knowledge, right? And, we'll talk more and more about this as class goes on, but generally speaking, this is a class about critical thinking. You think every day, and so improving the way that you think means you'll have a better quality of life. So let's get on to the grade section, right? So everybody wants to know, what is my grade going to be? Here's how you calculate it. Most of your grade comes from the quizzes. Now, they're not weekly. It says weekly right here. They're not quite weekly, but they're frequent. They might as well be weekly. Those constitute 70% of your grade. Then you will have 15% of your grade based on presentation and in-class discussions. And then 15% of your grade will be determined by a paper that you turn in. It's a paper about Roswell, New Mexico and the aliens there. It will be worth 15% of your grade. It's basically an argumentation paper. So, and then I'm going to just flow into our next quote here by Mary Wollstonecraft. The being cannot be termed rational or virtuous who obeys any authority but that of reason. And here the idea is, if we don't follow reason and the rules of logic, then we're going to make a mistake, right? And we don't want to do that. So now, I'm going to briefly run through another inspirational quote. Thanks, Professor Vint. What is this class about? Well, the student learning outcomes here tell you exactly what you're going to be doing in this class. The problem is you really can only understand what this is after you've completed the class. So to some extent, this is going to sound like Greek. Don't worry, that's okay, right? It will all make sense at the end. Okay, so student learning outcomes. We have three for this class. Analyze arguments and components of arguments. Distinguish between examples of inductive arguments and deductive arguments, and evaluate inductive arguments for strength, cogency, and or presence of fallacies in speech or text. I'm going to try to render these in English for you guys so you know what in normal, less technical terms. I don't normally speak that way, so that's why I said that. Obviously, this is in English. Analyze arguments and components of arguments. So you're going to learn that not only do you have to have reasons for thinking something, but those reasons have to have a certain relationship to your conclusion. So in other words, you can't just throw out any old reason. You're going to need to throw out good ones. So that is more or less, right, the first part. this is distinguishing between different kinds of reasoning, and that will be more clear to you. But it's a way to distinguish different ways that we think about the world. And then lastly, this is sort of a specialized outcome. Within a certain kind of reasoning, you're going to be able to look for fallacies and certain traits that we think are good. So fallacies are bad right here, but this other stuff, strength, cogency, those are great. Okay. Another hallmark quote here for the class. It comes from Goethe, who was a German scholar. Doubt grows with knowledge. And the idea is the more you know, the more you understand how easy it is to be wrong. Or the more you know, the more you realize that you're very good at fooling yourself into thinking that you know a lot, but you don't. Okay, so this is a little preview here of Roswell. It's a really fun paper. I go through the history of Roswell, and then you provide arguments for or against it. We also cover psychic phenomena. That's second sight. It's a fun little module. We have perception. We'll be studying perception, and that should look a little weird to you right now. The idea behind studying perception is to show you that you think that you're perceiving the world, right? That our eyes are somehow a window onto the world. But it's probably closer to say that we make the world. The world is definitely out there, and it's definitely objective, but we don't see it as it is. Instead, we have all kinds of shortcuts, things that have happened in our brain that affect the way that we see reality, the way that we think about reality. And if those ways aren't corrected, then we're bound to make huge mistakes. We'll talk about memories and how frail they are, how quickly they can go. Interestingly enough, the worse your memory gets, very often the confidence in your memory stays the same. So you find people who we can demonstrate that they're having an incorrect memory, right? A false memory. And yet they are completely positive that this happened, right? 100%. The line is, control your mind or someone else will, right? We are in a world, we are in an environment now where facts are easy to come by. You can just Google them. But what you need to learn how to do in order to contribute, or at least something that is important to do if you're going to contribute to society and learn, is to understand how to think, right? And in this course, this is super important to me. I don't care what you believe. That's not what this course is about. I care that the things that you believe deeply about, you have sound, good quality reasoning for it. And that's really the essence, right, of the class. Okay, so we've run through student learning outcomes already. Office hours are not applicable. This is a web-only class, so that will not take place. Ooh, and you know what? Let me change this date too. This looks just awful. It'll be corrected on your version, but I cannot go back into the last 10 minutes here. Okay, this is our book, Pseudoscience and Extraordinary Claims of the Paranormal. It's by Jonathan Smith. It's not a perfect book, but it's good. Again, here's the course requirements. We've already covered that. If you have any questions or concerns, contact me, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Not as frequently looking at Facebook, but Twitter and Instagram, I do get responses. You can also obviously email me. This is additional instructor contact. That would be just fine. Let's see. Okay, so now we get to a bunch of blocks of texts. Let me try and hit the highlights on the most important ones, but I do encourage you to look at all of the syllabus. The first thing, if you need to drop the course, do that with admissions and records. I don't do it. Emailing me and saying I want to drop, unfortunately, I just don't have the power to do that. So you'll have to do that through admissions and records. Next, this class proceeds on a modular basis. So what that means is I have dates, and they say January the 3rd to January the 9th or something like that. And in that case, you are going to complete that before January the 9th, because once January the 9th hits, that module will close. So I have to do this. I have to proceed in a modular basis so that everybody stays on board. Excuse me. So if you're going to be gone for a few weeks or a couple weeks or a week and you're not going to be able to access the internet, I don't know how well you'll do in the class, right? Because this is just a 5-week course. Content disclaimer, super important. This one line here, your course grade does not depend upon what you believe. So in this course, we're going to talk about psychics, and we're going to talk about all sorts of strange things, UFOs, Bigfoot, all this strange stuff. We talk about this stuff because these are typically weird cases. These are what are called anomalous cases. And so, for instance, somebody has a report that they saw their grandfather and he's been dead for 10 years and they talked to them last night. In this course, we'll look at what rational grounds there are for believing in something like that. But at the end of the day, that job, right, whether or not the evidence is sufficient to warrant belief, that's your decision. So although this class, I love to talk about it and do it, I won't ask you about your belief per se. This is really important because in this class, we do talk about some of these bizarre outlying instances, and people do feel very strongly about them. I had a student once who was absolutely convinced, and she'd gone to a psychic with her mother, and she believed it was real. She was an excellent student, by the way. She got an A in the class. She did super well. Your coursework doesn't depend on that. I want you to make up your own mind. Instead, the reason why we pick paranormal or strange cases, these kinds of anomalous cases, is because if our reasoning is working properly when dealing with some of these strange things like ghosts and UFOs, then it'll be fine when we get to other stuff like politics and economics. So we're still fulfilling the state requirement to study reasoning, which is right here. But we're going to do it with a little more of a fun twist. So instead of doing politics and economics and all that stuff, instead we study critical thinking kind of with things that go bump in the night. Okay, so again, your grade doesn't depend upon what you believe. Next, you will need to have internet access for this. Absolutely true. You must have a current email account and register that one with Moodle so that I can get in contact with you if I need to. Academic integrity. Please, if you are going to use somebody else's work, use quotes, identify that you're using their work, cite it, and then explain why you chose this quote. I know very often students are jammed and they're trying to get stuff done and they're working and they have family and they have outside commitments. In that case, don't try to cheat to make the deadline. Just email me. I'm happy to work with folks. But when you plagiarize, which is a fancy way of saying you take somebody else's work and you represent it as your own, it will really hurt your grade. So please, please, please. Don't plagiarize anybody else's work. This will come in mostly with the Roswell paper. So if you're having trouble with it, let me know. Okay. Or you're not sure, am I plagiarizing here or not? Please let me know. When in doubt, go ahead and quote. Okay, so these are just student services that are available on campus. I'm not going to go into them in great detail because this course doesn't meet on campus. They're there for your perusal. Assignments. The sequence of assignments is attached at the bottom down here. Where are we? Right here. But that's tentative. That's a tentative schedule. It's not hammered in diamond. If I have to move something to help you guys, then I'll do it. If I can open something early to help you guys, I'll do it, right? So keep that in mind. There are no makeup assignments for the course, so make sure you finish all of your quizzes early and on time. Discipline policy, we're all adults here, and we all know what proper interaction is. You'll be doing some online discussions with your colleagues, so we'll try to keep those things to the issues and not make them personal. Academic freedom. I mentioned this just as a quick side note, and this almost every professor should tell you this, but you're going to be exposed to things in this class that will be in conflict with your personal worldview. I know this because I take a variety of contradictory stances throughout the course, right? I'm not doing it to try and change anybody's worldview or get them to think a certain way. That would just be propaganda, not education. But when you feel that conflict and when you feel that tension between what you believe and what's being presented, the best thing to do is to focus on that, what is at issue, and not necessarily the person who's making the issue. Maybe someone in a discussion feels very strongly about something and you don't. That's fine. You can note the disagreement, right, with your colleagues. That's perfectly fine. But don't start committing sort of abusive behavior and stuff like that online. Usually this is really not a problem, so I don't expect it to be with you guys. But if there's any problem, please let me know. I'll be there. Class attendance. This is this one note that I always bring up. This is a fast course, baby. You're going to be doing a lot of work in a very short period of time. If you don't think you can handle the course, please give that slot to another student, because I know lots of students who would like to be in this class. Spelling, grammar, and punctuation always count. Lots and lots of resources online to help you with, on campus to help you with your writing. I encourage you to take advantage of those resources. Okay, this is our class schedule. This is tentative, so I'm going to try to open some stuff up early. So I'll have chapter 1 and 2 open. I'll have the paper assignment. I'll try to get it open as soon as I can. You'll notice here, so for instance, the first 2 weeks, you guys have these 2 chapters and your paper is assigned, but your paper is not due until the 23rd of January. So you have some time, but I want to open it early so that you can start working on it. This is because the rest of the month is super busy, right? We're going to do chapters 4 and 5 the next week. Then we're going to do 6 the next week, and then the week after that, it'll be chapter 7 and chapter 8. So what I've done, because we don't have enough weeks to roll out 1 chapter a week, you'll notice that in the middle of the month of January, we're going to be opening 2 sections at once, chapters 4 and 5 and chapter 6. They're both going to be due on the 23rd, but they're both going to open at the same time. In theory, nothing would prevent you from doing 6 first. However, I would encourage you to do them in order. Okay, so that's it. Your presentation will due January the 31st. Don't worry. We'll talk about that more as time goes on. So that is our basic rundown. The first week of the course, you're going to cover chapters 1 and 2, watch the lecture, and take exam 1. Okay? All right, I hope that's helpful. If you do not have the book and you really want to do this test, your first exam will be unlimited. You can take it as many times as you want. That's because many people are still ordering the book. Okay? All right, if you guys have any questions, email or message me. I'm really looking forward to this class. It is absolutely one of my favorite to teach.